I never thought my 7-year marriage would come down to an ultimatum. Melanie and I had built what I considered a good life together. Nice house in the suburbs, successful careers, and plans for starting a family. Then one night, after our anniversary dinner, she dropped the bomb. She needed to explore herself, she said. Feel free before settling down completely. Her solution: open our marriage or get divorced. Just like that. 2 options, neither of which I wanted. I reluctantly agreed to try the open marriage to save what we had. The months that followed changed everything, but not how Melanie expected. Now she wants to close our marriage again, but the problem is I am completely over it. Before I tell you how everything changed, let me know where you are watching from. Hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if you have ever had to make a tough choice to save something you loved or to save yourself. I have learned some powerful lessons that might help you too. I guess I should start from the beginning. I am Broderick, 35 years old, and I work as a software engineer for a tech company in Boston. My friends would describe me as the dependable guy, someone who values stability and follows through on commitments. I have always been somewhat traditional in my outlook on relationships, not controlling or anything, just a believer in building something lasting with one person. I met Melanie at a technology conference 7 years ago. I was presenting a panel on user experience design, and she was handling the marketing for the event. She caught my attention immediately with her confident presence and quick wit. During the networking mixer afterward, she approached me with questions about my presentation that showed she had actually been listening, not just going through professional motions. We exchanged numbers under the guise of professional networking, but we both knew there was more to it. Our first date happened just 3 days later, a coffee that turned into lunch that turned into dinner. Conversation flowed effortlessly as we discovered shared interests in hiking, psychological thrillers, and ambitious travel plans. The relationship progressed naturally from there. We dated for 2 years, taking our time to really know each other. I proposed during a weekend trip to Vermont, nothing flashy, just a private moment on a mountain overlook at sunset. Melanie cried and said it was exactly how she would have wanted it to happen. Our wedding was small but warm, just 60 guests at a converted barn venue with string lights and wildflowers. The first few years of marriage were genuinely happy. We bought a house in a suburb with good schools, thinking ahead to the children we planned to have. We supported each other through career advancements, celebrated small victories, and weathered normal challenges like family holiday stress and home repairs. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary for a young couple building a life together. Looking back, I can see the first signs of trouble around year 5. Melanie began to push back whenever I brought up our timeline for starting a family. At first it was reasonable, wanting to reach certain career milestones first. But then the goalposts kept moving. After her promotion, it was wanting to enjoy travel without children. After our trip to Japan, it was concern about bringing children into an uncertain world. Alongside this, Melanie started making new friends at work after her company merged with a larger firm. Suddenly there were happy hours. I was not invited to weekend brunches with her new marketing team, and inside jokes I was not part of. I tried to be understanding, recognizing that professional networking was important for her career, but I felt us growing distant. I attempted to reconnect in various ways. I planned special date nights, suggested weekend getaways, even proposed couples cooking classes to create new shared experiences. Melanie would participate, seemingly enjoying herself, but then quickly return to her increasingly separate life. Our conversations became more superficial, focusing on household logistics rather than dreams or feelings. Then came our 7th anniversary. I made reservations at the restaurant where we had celebrated our engagement. Melanie seemed distracted throughout dinner, checking her phone frequently and offering only brief responses to my attempts at meaningful conversation. As we drove home, I thought she was simply tired from a long work week. I had no idea she was preparing to deliver an ultimatum that would change everything. As soon as we got home, Melanie asked me to sit down in our living room. Her expression was serious in a way that made my stomach tighten with anxiety. She poured herself a glass of wine but did not offer me one, which was unusual and should have been my first clue that this was not going to be a mutual conversation. "I need to talk to you about something important, Broderick," she began, her voice steady. "I have been doing a lot of thinking about our marriage and where we are headed." I nodded, assuming this would be another discussion about postponing children or perhaps a career opportunity requiring travel. What came next blindsided me completely. "I feel confined in our current arrangement," she continued. Before we take permanent steps like having children, I need to explore aspects of myself that I feel are being suppressed. I have done a lot of research, and I think an open marriage would give us both the freedom to grow while maintaining our partnership." I sat in stunned silence, trying to process what she was suggesting. When I finally found my voice, it came out embarrassingly weak. "Are you saying you want to sleep with other people? It is not just about sex," she explained with a hint of condescension. "It is about emotional freedom, exploring connections with others without arbitrary restrictions." Many modern couples are embracing this model successfully. When I expressed my discomfort with the idea, Melanie's expression hardened. "I need you to understand that this is not negotiable for me. I have given this a lot of thought. Either we open our marriage or we need to consider divorce." The word divorce hit me like a physical blow. 7 years, countless memories, a home built together, future plans, all potentially erased with a single word. In that moment, I could barely think straight, let alone form a coherent response. "I need time to think about this," I managed to say. Melanie nodded. "Take the time you need, but not too long. I have already waited months to bring this up, trying to find the right moment." The revelation that she had been contemplating this for months while I remained oblivious only deepened my sense of betrayal. Had our recent date nights and moments of intimacy been merely her going through the motions while planning this ultimatum? Over the next 2 weeks, we had multiple extended conversations about what an open marriage would mean. I suggested couples counseling, thinking a professional might help us address whatever underlying issues were causing Melanie to seek fulfillment outside our marriage. She dismissed the idea immediately. "This is not about fixing something broken," she insisted. "It is about expanding what we have. A therapist would just try to force us into conventional boxes." I researched open marriages extensively, reading articles, forums, and even a few books on ethical non-monogamy. Most resources emphasize that successful open relationships required a foundation of rock-solid trust, extensive communication, and mutual desire for that arrangement. None of those elements seemed present in our situation. This was not a mutual exploration, but an ultimatum delivered after a unilateral decision. Despite my reservations, the alternative terrified me. The thought of losing Melanie, of dismantling the life we had built, of admitting failure to our families and friends, all felt unbearable. So after weeks of agonizing, I reluctantly agreed to try an open marriage, hoping that perhaps it would be a phase that Melanie would explore and realize what we had was worth preserving exclusively. We established some basic guidelines, including practicing safe sex, being discreet with family and colleagues, and checking in weekly about our feeling. Looking back, I realize how naive I was to think these surface-level rules would protect our relationship when the fundamental trust had already been broken by how this change was forced upon me. The transformation of our marriage happened quickly once I agreed to Melanie's terms. Within 2 weeks, she had already begun dating Jason, a younger marketing executive who had recently joined her company. I discovered this not because she told me directly, but because I overheard her laughing on the phone late one night, using the playful voice that had once been reserved for me. When confronted, she was unapologetic. "This is what an open marriage means, Broderick. I am just following through with what we agreed upon." The first time she dressed up for a date with Jason, I felt physically ill. She wore a black dress I had never seen before, applied makeup more carefully than she had for our recent anniversary, and seemed genuinely excited in a way I had not witnessed in months. As she left with a casual "do not wait up," I sat alone in our living room, surrounded by wedding photos that suddenly felt like artifacts from someone else's life. Our day-to-day existence changed dramatically. Melanie would often text last minute to say she would not be home for dinner. Sometimes she would not come home at all, offering brief explanations about staying at a friend's place. I knew what that meant, but we had both agreed not to ask for explicit details about our outside relationships. I tried dating apps, half-heartedly matching with a few women, but canceling plans before actually meeting anyone. My heart was not in it. While Melanie embraced her new freedom with enthusiasm, I found myself caught in a painful limbo, technically free to pursue others, but emotionally still committed to a woman who was slipping away. The weekly check-ins Melanie had suggested quickly became sporadic, then faded entirely. When I tried to initiate these conversations, she would become defensive or dismiss my concerns as neediness. "This is why we needed to open things up," she would say. "You are too dependent on me for your emotional needs." Desperate for understanding, I found an online support group for people in open marriages. Many members described positive experiences, but these were couples who had mutually chosen this path after extensive discussion. Others shared stories similar to mine where one partner had essentially forced the arrangement. These stories rarely ended happily. After 2 months of increasing isolation and depression, I finally made an appointment with a therapist. Dr. Winters was a compassionate woman in her 50s who specialized in relationship issues. In our first session, I explained my situation, half expecting her to push me toward accepting Melanie's new vision for our marriage. Instead, she asked a question that changed everything. What would you want if you were only considering your own well-being, not Melanie's demands or the fear of ending your marriage? The question stunned me because I realized I had stopped considering my own desires entirely. I had become so focused on preventing divorce that I had accepted an arrangement that was destroying my self-respect and happiness. Over the next few sessions, Dr. Winters helped me understand that the core issue was not open marriage itself, but the profound lack of respect Melanie had shown in how she approached the change. Healthy relationships, whether monogamous or non-monogamous, require mutual consent, consideration, and compromise. Broderick. She said during a particularly powerful session, "You deserve to be with someone who values your needs as much as their own. That is not dependent on what type of relationship structure you have." This realization was both painful and liberating. I had been clinging to the shell of my marriage, while the substance, the mutual respect and consideration, had already disappeared. If Melanie could disregard my feelings so completely on something this fundamental, what did that say about how she valued me as a partner? That night, I went home and looked at myself in the bathroom mirror for a long time. I barely recognized the sad, uncertain man staring back at me. I made a decision then that would alter the course of everything if Melanie could prioritize her happiness. I could and would do the same for mine. The shift in my mindset changed everything. Instead of spending my evenings waiting for Melanie to potentially come home, I began reconstructing my own life. I rejoined the gym I had abandoned when Melanie complained about the evening hours cutting into our time together. The physical exertion provided an outlet for my frustration, and the endorphins helped combat the depression that had been settling over me. I reached out to old friends I had lost touch with during my marriage. Friends Melanie had subtly discouraged me from maintaining close relationships with. Mark, my college roommate, was particularly supportive, having gone through a difficult divorce himself a few years earlier. "Man, I was worried about you," he confessed over beers. "You just kind of disappeared into your relationship." The old Broderick would never have let someone dictate the terms of his life like this. His words stung because they were true. I had gradually surrendered pieces of myself, compromising on more and more, until I hardly recognized my own life. It was time to reclaim those pieces. I joined a weekend hiking group, rekindling my passion for outdoor activities that had taken a back seat to Melanie's preference for urban entertainment. The first Saturday, I laced up my boots and hit the trails with a dozen strangers. I felt a sense of freedom I had nearly forgotten. The conversation was easy, the physical challenge invigorating, and the connection with nature grounding. In one of these hiking groups, I met Sophia, an architectural designer, with an infectious laugh and thoughtful perspective on everything from trail conservation to science fiction novels. Our conversations on group hikes gradually extended to coffee afterward, and eventually to dinner. I was upfront about my complicated marital situation, expecting her to run for the hills. Instead, she appreciated my honesty and suggested we take things slowly, getting to know each other as friends first. As we grew closer, I consulted Dr. Winters about the ethics of pursuing a new relationship while technically still married. She helped me recognize that I was honoring the open arrangement Melanie had insisted upon, while also acknowledging that my marriage existed more on paper than in reality at this point. Meanwhile, I invested in my appearance in ways I had neglected. I got a new haircut, updated my wardrobe beyond the practical but uninspired clothes I had worn for years, and even whitened my teeth, something I had considered but always deemed too vain or unnecessary before. These changes were not for Sophia or to compete with Jason, but for myself, small acts of self-care that reflected my growing sense of self-worth. At home, I began making subtle changes to spaces that had primarily reflected Melanie's taste. I replaced the living room artwork with photographs from my hiking trips, rearranged furniture for better flow rather than strict aesthetics, and created a small office space for my own projects. I was no longer waiting for permission to exist fully in my own home. Dr. Winters guided me through establishing healthier boundaries. I stopped adjusting my schedule around Melanie's unpredictable comings and goings. I cooked meals I enjoyed without worrying about accommodating her preferences. I declined invitations to awkward social gatherings where I would be expected to play the role of supportive husband while being fully aware of her relationship with Jason. Throughout this transformation, Melanie remained largely oblivious, so caught up in her relationship with Jason and the excitement of her new lifestyle that she barely registered the changes in me. That is, until the changes became impossible to ignore. The first sign that Melanie had noticed my evolution came about 4 months into our open marriage experiment. I had plans with Sophia to attend an outdoor concert, and I was getting ready when Melanie came home unexpectedly early. "You look nice," she commented, her tone suggesting surprise. "Where are you going?" "To a concert at the park," I replied casually, no longer feeling the need to seek approval or permission. "With who?" The question came quickly, with an edge I had not heard directed at me in some time. "A friend named Sophia from my hiking group." Melanie paused, clearly processing this information. "Is this a date?" The question struck me as remarkably hypocritical, given that she had spent the last several months openly dating Jason, often not coming home until the following morning. Still, I answered honestly, "Yes, I suppose it is." Something shifted in her expression, a flash of what looked almost like jealousy before she composed herself. "I did not realize you were actually dating anyone. That was the arrangement you wanted," I reminded her gently, not looking to provoke an argument but also not willing to apologize for following the very terms she had established. She nodded stiffly and retreated to the kitchen without further comment. It was the first sign of what was to come. Over the next few weeks, I noticed Melanie spending more evenings at home. She began asking more questions about my activities, showing sudden interest in my hiking group, and subtly probing for information about Sophia. Then one evening, she announced that things had ended with Jason. "It just was not working out," she explained vaguely, while preparing dinner, something she had not done in months. "He wanted more commitment than I was able to give, considering my marriage." I offered appropriate sympathy, but felt no need to press for details. Her relationship with Jason had become a peripheral concern to me, something that affected her life, but no longer determined the state of my emotional well-being. Melanie began initiating more couple activities, suggesting weekend trips and date nights reminiscent of our early marriage. At first, I participated out of courtesy, but maintained my independent activities and continued seeing Sophia. Then came the conversation I had half expected, but still found jarring. "Broderick, I have been thinking a lot about us and our arrangement," Melanie began one evening as we were clearing dinner dishes. "I think my exploration phase has run its course. I am ready to close our marriage again and recommit to each other exclusively." I continued drying a plate, taking a moment to gather my thoughts before responding. "What brought this on? I realized that what we had was special," she said, reaching for my hand across the counter. "The freedom was exciting for a while, but ultimately empty. You are my husband, and I want us to work on our relationship, maybe even revisit the conversation about starting a family." When I did not immediately agree, confusion crossed her face. "Is not this what you wanted all along? For things to go back to normal between us?" "That was what I wanted months ago," I acknowledged. "But things have changed." "I have changed." Her expression darkened when I mentioned my continuing relationship with Sophia. "You cannot be serious," she said. "She was just supposed to be a distraction, not someone important." "That is not for you to decide," I replied, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "You opened this door, Melanie. You cannot dictate how I walk through it." The argument escalated from there, with Melanie alternating between accusations of betrayal, which struck me as deeply ironic, and emotional appeals to our history together. When nothing seemed to sway me, she delivered her final blow. "If you truly care about making our marriage work, you will end things with her immediately. I am your wife." In that moment, seeing the entitled expectation on her face, everything became crystal clear to me. This had never been about mutual growth or exploration. It had been about Melanie wanting freedom without consequences, expecting me to wait patiently until she was ready to reclaim the commitment she had so easily discarded. "I think we need to have a serious conversation about our future," I said quietly, "but not like this, not when emotions are high. Let me know when you are ready to talk calmly." I grabbed my keys and left for a drive, needing space to process the staggering double standard she had just revealed. The man who would have anxiously tried to fix everything 6 months ago was gone. In his place was someone who recognized his own worth and would not sacrifice it even to preserve a marriage that existed more in name than in substance. 2 days after our confrontation, Melanie and I sat down for what would become the most honest conversation of our marriage. I had prepared mentally with Dr. Winters, clarifying my feelings and establishing the boundaries I needed to maintain my self-respect regardless of the outcome. "I want to understand what changed." Melanie began, her tone more measured than during our argument. "You were so devastated by the idea of opening our marriage, and now you are unwilling to close it when I am ready." I took a deep breath before answering. "What changed is that I was forced to rebuild myself after you presented an ultimatum that disregarded my feelings entirely. I learned that I deserve to be with someone who considers my needs as important as their own. I made a mistake," she admitted, tears forming. "I got caught up in the excitement of something new with Jason, but it was shallow compared to what we built together." "Can you not forgive one mistake?" "This was not one mistake, Melanie. It was a fundamental breach of how partners should treat each other. You were willing to throw away our marriage if I did not agree to your terms. You only want exclusivity now because Jason ended things, and you see me moving on." Her expression confirmed my suspicion. "That is not entirely true," she protested, but without conviction. "Be honest. If Jason had wanted to continue your relationship, would you be asking to close our marriage now?" Her silence was answer enough. "I have spent months in therapy. I continued working through the pain of having my partner essentially tell me I was not enough. I had to reconstruct my sense of self-worth piece by piece. That process changed me. But we can go to counseling now," she suggested, seizing on my mention of therapy. "We can work through this together. I will do the work I refused before." I shook my head sadly. Some boundaries once crossed cannot be uncrossed. Some trust once broken cannot be fully repaired. I value what we had, but I cannot go backwards. So you are choosing her over me. After 7 years together, her tone hardened, the vulnerability giving way to anger. "This is not about Sophia, though I do care for her deeply. This is about me respecting myself enough not to return to a relationship where my needs and feelings were treated as optional. Even if Sophia were not in the picture, I would not want to resume our marriage as it was." Melanie cried, then real tears of loss and regret. Despite everything, part of me wanted to comfort her, to fall back into familiar patterns. But I remained firm in my conviction that we had reached a point of no return. We agreed to begin divorce proceedings, amicably dividing assets fairly and without unnecessary conflict. Melanie asked for time to find her own apartment, which I granted. We would tell family and friends together that we had grown apart and made the mutual decision to end our marriage, sparing both of us the public examination of our private struggles. As our conversation concluded, Melanie asked one final question: "Do you hate me for what I did?" "No," I answered truthfully. "I am grateful for the good years we had, and in an odd way, I am grateful for the ultimatum too. It forced me to confront how much of myself I had compromised. I have found strength I never knew I had." She nodded slowly, acceptance gradually replacing the hope of reconciliation in her eyes. "You really are different now," she observed quietly. "I did not think you would ever stand up to me like this." Her comment confirmed what I had long suspected but never acknowledged: our marriage had contained an unhealthy power dynamic that I had enabled through my fear of losing her. In the end, it was only by becoming willing to lose everything that I found my way back to myself. Sometimes the ultimatum you fear the most becomes the doorway to the life you deserve. What difficult choice helped you find your own worth? Share your story in the comments below. If my journey resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more authentic stories about reclaiming personal power in challenging situations. And if you know someone who might need to hear this message, share this video with them. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that honoring your own needs is not selfish. It is essential to building healthy relationships with others.